After watching President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sign an agreement to work towards the denuclearized state, there is a renewed hope of Middle East peace among the leaders of Israel. We will discuss the prophetic significance of these events on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, man, the prophetic fulfillments are happening just at an alarming rate right now. It's really hard for us to keep up with everything. But most of you guys have seen, you saw what happened last evening with President Donald Trump and the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And I want to go through some of the prophetic significance of that and what it's really leading to in another prophecy. But I want to give you a little history first, because one of the main points of my program today is how things can change on a dime. They can be ambling along for years at a certain pace or a certain ideology, and then all of a sudden, boom, it can change on a dime and switch. So you can follow things for years and think, man, that's never going to happen. You can look at the Middle East and say, there's no way there's ever going to be a peace agreement. Many guys have tried and failed. Or you could look at what happened with Kim Jong-un and the United States. And a few months ago, you would have thought, there's no way there's going to be that Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un would be sitting down at a table signing a form of a peace agreement. And so that's the main point of my program today, is just because things go along for decades, even centuries, it doesn't mean that they can't change on a dime and line right up with the prophecies of the Bible. So let me, before I get into the Israel part of it and the Middle East peace agreement, let's talk about what happened last evening, and let me give you a little history leading up to it. Because if you didn't follow it, you might think, well, okay, hey, President Trump sat down with Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, who cares? But if you follow the history of it and what led up to that, just over the last year, then you can see the importance of that and how it can affect the Middle East peace agreement, which is what we're watching for from a prophetic standpoint. So Frontline gave a really good timeline of what happened leading up to last night's summit. And if you remember back in 2017, the war of words between President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. So in 2017, North Korea really reached two significant milestones. It successfully test-fired its first intercontinental ballistic missile in July, almost a year ago now, capable of reaching Alaska. So you're talking about a communistic country, an isolated country that had an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching United States soil. Well, you were sitting over here in the United States thinking, okay, now that's not a good thing. And so our leaders, many of us in the United States, were really alarmed by that. And once again, North Korea claimed to successfully test a hydrogen bomb. And, really whether it was indeed a hydrogen bomb has not been confirmed, but its nuclear test in September was recorded as North Korea's most powerful yet, at an estimated of 250 kilotons. So you're talking about an unbelievable bomb. I mean, just to do immense amounts of destruction were it to be set off on U.S. soil or anywhere else. So when he addressed the UN General Assembly in September, President Trump said that if the United States was forced to defend itself or its allies, it would have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea at that time, which we have the capability of doing with our nuclear arsenal. So he was referring to Kim Jong-un, and he also referred to Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, as the Rocket Man. You remember hearing that on the news, which was a huge insult to Kim Jong-un. And Trump said that the North Korean leader was on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. In other words, threatening to fire a missile at the United States of America. Donald Trump said, we're going to go in there and just wipe out the whole country. We're not going to mess around. It's not going to be boots on the ground and all this other stuff. You fire a missile at the United States, we're going to eliminate North Korea from the map. Well, then in 2018, there was an opening for talks, and a lot of people thought, man, there's no way. These guys were just talking about going into a nuclear situation. But in 2018, things changed on a dime, which they can do. And I want you to think about this when we get into what's going on with the peace agreement, the Middle East, the Iran nuclear situation. Think about this scenario. So I know we're coming up to a break. When we get back from the break, we'll go into the opening for talks early 2018, and we'll lead up to the summit that occurred last night. I'll give you the particulars of the summit, what happened, and then we'll get off into the prophesied peace agreement, what's going on in the Middle East, what's coming just ahead of us that's very significant from the prophecies of the Bible.
We are living in one of the greatest times of human history. We are just before the second coming of Jesus Christ. There are close to 1,000 prophecies concerning this time. Yet, the scriptures tell us that most people will miss the second coming of Jesus. You do not want to miss this. You can understand the times we live in and what is just ahead. You can share the information with others. Know the truth about Bible prophecy. The Understanding the End Time series was designed to help you learn the prophecies in easy-to-understand terms. 14 hours of teaching about the mark of the beast, World War III, Islam in Bible prophecy, and so much more. Equip yourself today by going to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 to get your Understanding the End Time series. The End Time Prophecy Tour was the most wonderful tour. I would like to thank Irvin and Judy Baxter for a fabulous trip to Israel. I know it took much effort and planning to make it successful. What a tremendous time we all had, which warrants a great big thank you. You can't encapsulate it into words. You can't capture it with a photograph. You just have to experience Israel yourself. The Queen of Sheba said, "The half has not been told." I concur. What an awesome experience to visit the land of Bible history and see it come alive as you walk its paths. I shall be forever changed. Dale from Louisiana.
Join us October 25th through November 5th, 2018. You too can experience Israel with Irvin and Judy Baxter. Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 to sign up today.
So, in moving on through our just a small bit of history here leading up to what happened yet last evening with President Trump and Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, at the beginning of 2018, there was an opening created for possible talks to alleviate this hostile situation. As their country prepared to host the Winter Olympics, South Korean President Moon Jae-in reached out to North Korea. He invited their athletes from the north to march with the southern counterparts in the opening ceremony under one flag. Kim Jong-un accepted the invitation and sent his sister as a representative. And the despot offered, and this agreement offered an opening, and a senior North Korean official who attended the closing ceremony indicated that the North was willing to talk with the U.S. And so that opened a huge door. And then in early March, news broke that Kim Jong-un had invited President Trump to meet for negotiations about North Korea's nuclear program. Which, remember, just months ago, they were talking about going head-to-head and firing missiles at each other. President Trump was talking about wiping out North Korea. And now he invited him for negotiations to talk about his nuclear program. Well, the White House said that President Trump had accepted the invitation, and he tweeted that the North Korean leader spoke to the South Korean representatives about denuclearization, not just a freeze. And then he continued and he said, great progress has been made, but sanctions would remain in place until an agreement was reached. And of course, then at that point, a meeting was being planned. Well, then in mid-April, Donald Trump confirmed reports that then CIA Director Mike Pompeo made a top-secret trip to meet with Kim Jong-un in North Korea in late March. The meeting came shortly after Pompeo was nominated for Secretary of State. On April 20th, North Korea announced that it would suspend nuclear and missile testing and shut down the site where its 6 previous nuclear tests were carried out. So this was huge because North Korea, they wanted to get nuclear missiles and have a nuclear arsenal so they could protect themselves, because they looked back at what had happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and said, that's not going to happen to us. The United States is not going to come in, tell us what to do, set up a democracy here. This is a dictatorship. We don't want that. And the only way to keep that from happening is for us to have a nuclear arsenal. So that was their goal. And I'll get back to Muammar Gaddafi here in just a moment. Well, in early May, Trump announced a date and a location for the anticipated summit. It was going to be in Singapore on June the 12th, today, which it would have been last evening over there. Well, less than a week later, the plan was thrown into question when the North Korean leader issued an angry rebuke to remarks by Trump's new National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Bolton has suggested that the U.S. plan to denuclearize North Korea might follow the Libya model, okay? So back in 2003, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program in exchange for sanction relief, and he ended up being brutally killed a few years later by U.S.-backed rebels. Okay? Well, Kim Jong-un said, that's not going to happen to me. He remembered what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. Well, Bolton said that, hey, that's what we kind of needs to look like here if he doesn't get on board. Well, after Bolton's statement about Muammar Gaddafi and the Libyan model, North Korea said it would have to reconsider its participation in the summit. Then Vice President Mike Pence, he gave his 2 cents worth on May 21st, and he said in a televised interview that this would only end like the Libyan model. He said it again, that it would end the same way if Kim Jong-un doesn't make a deal. Well, North Korea responded a few days later with a furious statement from their Vice Foreign Minister, Cho Sun-hui, and he was calling Pence's remarks unbridled and impudent. Well, so once again, she cast doubt on the North Korea's participation in the summit if the U.S. clings to their unlawful and outrageous acts. He knew very well what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. Well, on May 24th, President Trump canceled the summit. He said, he was saying that, hey, there's tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in Kim Jong-un's most recent statements, but he seemed to leave the door open to future dialogue, thanking North Korea for releasing the American hostages. And he wrote, he said, if you change your mind having to do with the important summit, please don't hesitate to call me or to write. But he wasn't going to go in there with Kim Jong-un with a hostile mentality. He said, nothing's going to happen. So he simply canceled the summit. Well, diplomats from both sides conducted an intense flurry of talks, and they revived preparations shortly thereafter. And it culminated in a meeting between Trump and Kim's right-hand man, Kim Jong-chol, at the White House just a few days ago. Or I should say maybe a week and a half ago. Well, following that meeting, Trump told reporters that, hey, the summit's back on. Well, that resulted in yesterday, President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signing an agreement at the conclusion of this historical summit last evening, which was a huge turn of events. Remember the history lesson I just gave you. These guys were at each other's throat just months ago. And now here they are last evening signing a peace agreement. President Donald Trump of the United States and the chairman Kim Jong-un of the State Affairs Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or the DPRK, they held the first historic summit in Singapore. First time a president from the United States has ever met with them. And he convinced the establishment of the U.S. and the DPRK relations that they would contribute to peace and prosperity of the Korean Peninsula and of the world in recognizing that mutual confidence building can promote the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It was huge. President Trump and Chairman Kim, they both stated 4 specific points in the document that they signed. Number 1, the United States and the DPRK, they would commit to establish new U.S.-DPRK relations in accordance with the desire of all the peoples of the two countries for peace and prosperity. Now, you're going to see in a minute how much of a master negotiator Donald Trump is, because these guys knew exactly. They had many meetings, and they knew exactly what they're doing before they ever got there. They knew what the document said. They had all read through it. They had approved it. The meeting was for basically all of us, because they knew exactly what they were getting into. I've got many articles that talk about they knew exactly what they were getting into before they ever got there. And so it was very, very historic. Number 2, the United States and the DPRK would join their efforts to build a lasting and stable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. I mean, this was as big as Reagan-Gorbachev back at the end of the Cold War. You remember that? Well, this was just as big as that. Historical meeting. Number 3, they reaffirmed that the April 27th, 2018 Panmunjom Declaration, the DPRK committed to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And finally, the United States and the DPRK committed to recovering the POW MIA remains, including the immediate repatriation of those that were already identified. So there was a lot in the agreement. A lot of people said, oh, that was just symbolic. No, there was a lot more to that. And we're going to hold them to that. The sanctions are not going to be relieved immediately. As they would denuclearize, the sanctions would lift. So there was a lot more to last night's meeting than some of the media is portraying. Well, then Fox News reports that Trump said, for now, obviously the sanctions on Korea would remain in place, and that they would be removed when the U.S. can be assured that nuclear weapons are no longer a factor. So he's not just going to go in and hand them $150 billion and say, please get rid of your nukes. Thank you very much. That's not what's going on. He's saying, hey, we'll sign a document of friendship here, and we need you to do certain things in agreement with this. Now, it's kind of cool. I'll tell you about something he did while he was there. It's really neat. But you can see how he's negotiating here. He didn't put out a dime. He may have paid for him a hotel room or something like that, which is kind of a comic relief in a way. But he didn't put out the $150 billion in sanction relief like the Obama administration did to Iran. I mean, think about it. He's negotiating here. It's what a negotiator does. He's making deals in the interest of the United States and many other countries around the world. I mean, imagine being South Korea. They were waiting with bated breath to see what happens because they had somebody who they were diametrically opposed to just north of their border that was creating nuclear weapons. So think about that. Well, Donald Trump, he said that the U.S. had planned to place 300 additional sanctions on North Korea recently, but that he had decided to hold off as it would have been really disrespectful ahead of the meeting. So Donald Trump was fixing to hammer down on the sanctions in an effort to cripple their economy, to keep them and say, hey, we will cripple you if you continue on with your quest towards a nuclear arsenal. Well, the News Asia, now listen at what Donald Trump, many of you have heard of this, but some haven't. News Asia reported that Donald Trump showed a video to Kim promising him a new world. And the promise of a new world, this video was presented to North Korean, the leader, Kim Jong-un, in a video that was made especially for him. And it was showed last night at the summit between him and the United States President, Donald Trump. The video, which was about 4 minutes long, was shown by Mr. Trump to Mr. Kim personally. In the video, there was a dramatic Hollywood-style voiceover described, it's a story of opportunity. And Donald Trump was basically saying, look, this is how prosperous you could be if you just wanted to play ball. Right now you're isolated, you're in abject poverty over there, your people are starving, I mean it's horrible. They have labor camps, it's horrible. He said, change your ways, play ball with us, and you can become prosperous. In other words, get on the team here, and we'll start trading with you. A lot of different things will happen. You've seen how the economies of North Korea and South Korea were the same. But when South Korea changed their ideology, their economy it took a hockey stick effect. It started going way up, whereas North Korea stayed the same. Well, Donald Trump is telling them in this video, look at how prosperous your country could be if you just wanted to get rid of your nukes, become peaceful, and play ball with everybody. Your economy could take off. So the video featured two men, two leaders, one destiny, over different montages of various scenes of Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim. The movie was produced like a movie trailer, and it described a story about a special moment in time when a man presented with one chance that may never be repeated. So this is what Donald Trump wanted to tell Mr. Kim. Look, there's one chance at this, not coming back. We're not going to visit this again. This is your chance to make a new start. The video said, it was a voiceover. It said, a new world can begin today, and one of friendship, respect, and goodwill, and be part of that world where the doors of opportunity are ready to be opened. And at one point, the video featured a montage of babies and automobile factories, and it was just flourishing economy, suggesting what a more prosperous future for North Korea could look like if it agreed to scrap its nuclear arsenal. So Donald Trump wasn't there just to say, look, sign this agreement, and I'm going to keep the sanctions on, and then you're going to go. No, he was saying, look where you could be if you would just get rid of your nukes, let's have a peaceful arrangement, a friendly agreement, and we'll start trading with you. Your economy will take off like a rocket. So to illustrate the point in the video, they actually had ballistic missiles that were shown in reverse action, pulling back and going back into their launch silos. So there was a very specific video that was shown, and he was giving Mr. Kim a message. If you'll do this, look how your economy could look. If you don't, it's going to be worse than it is now, because we're fixing to hammer down on you with more sanctions. And the video appeared, it was addressed right to Kim, and it suggested that he could make a choice that would open North Korea to new investments and step into a starring role in a moment in history with Donald Trump as an ally. And during the video, the narrator states, featuring President Donald Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un in a meeting to remake history, to shine in the sun, one moment and only one chance. And Trump actually stated that he said, we feel there could very well be a future for North Korea, because the other alternatives is just not a very good alternative. Sanctions crippling your economy. He said, I showed it to Kim Jong-un because I really want him to do something. So you can tell Donald Trump, the art of the deal, the master craftsman of the deal. He's a deal maker, and that's what he was there last evening to do, was to make a deal and say, look at the United States economy. We could join with you, and yours could prosper if you would just get rid of your nukes. He didn't go in there with skidfuls of cash and say, let me give you all this cash and hopefully you'll do something. That's not making a deal. That's making a deal with the devil at that point, because you're going to lose every time doing that. But he went in there and said, look, look where you could be in a few years if you would just get rid of your nukes. Let's be peaceful, having your nuclear program. And he offered, you remember the Muammar Gaddafi scenario? Muammar Gaddafi was annihilated, not under the Trump administration. Well, Kim Jong-un thought the same thing was going to happen to him. Well, Donald Trump promised him security. And if you look at all the articles and all the news flying around, he offered him a security presence saying, look, this is not going to happen to you. You can do away with your nuclear weapons and we will promise you security. So a whole nother ball game than what happened with Muammar Gaddafi. So the point of my program today, I know I'm going to come up to a break here in just a moment, but I want to make sure that you get it. And that, really, folks, what an amazing turnaround. It was only a few months ago when President Trump raised the prospect of a nuclear war with North Korea. And so there are many things happening here. First, President Trump showed himself to be a master negotiator. I mean, put yourself in Israel's shoes. I tell you what, I'm going to chalk the wheels right there because I got to make this point. This is such a key point, and it's going to take me through the rest of my program today about Israel and some different things that Donald Trump is doing. So if you're only getting the first 30 minutes, go to our endtime.com page and watch the archive program of the last 30 minutes today.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real-life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
We have some exciting news for you today. We have created a new lesson that exposes the establishment. 3 sinister forces are trying to maneuver the United States into a system of global governance. Who is the mastermind behind these organizations? These forces, which are controlled by Satan the dragon, will work hand in hand with the Antichrist, and Americans are fighting back. What is the master plan? Where do things stand right now? We rip the covers off of Satan's hidden agenda and give you answers to all of these questions in Master Plan of the Dragon. Arm yourself with the knowledge to combat these forces. Go to endtime.com to receive your copy today or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So think about what's going on in the mind of Israel, having watched what just happened over the last several months with the United States and North Korea. Just last year, they were threatened to go to war with each other, and Donald Trump had said, you fire a missile at us, we're going to wipe your entire country off the face of the planet. And like I said, we have the ability to do that. Israel watched the whole thing, and they're sitting back there going, this scenario, it's not going to happen. I mean, this is going to end bad. But just on a dime, things changed over just a course of months, which in the grand scheme of things is no time. Everything changed, and the President of the United States and Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, they sat down last night and signed a deal that said, look, we're going to work together for a peaceful North Korea going forward. Well, Israel is sitting there, and they've got, just like South Korea has North Korea, Israel has Iran, wanting to develop nuclear weapons in an effort to annihilate Israel. They've said it many times. There's not even a question about that, what their intentions are. They would love, number one, to wipe Israel off the map. They hate the United States. They're the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. Imagine them getting nuclear weapons. That would be worse than North Korea. And so Israel's sitting there looking at that and then looking at the North Korea situation, and they're saying, you know what? There may be hope here. So they're facing the nuclear Iran, and they're awaiting the soon release of Donald Trump's peace plan. Because if you look at the scenarios, up until just recently, most people thought there's no way that there's a solution with North Korea. It's not going to happen. Many people have tried and failed. It's not going to work. But yet, we've just started the process last night with Donald Trump as a master negotiator going in there, not firing a shot and not giving them wads of cash, just going in there, sitting down and saying, look, here's what you could have if you would simply just stop your efforts to get a nuclear weapon. Well, Israel's leader, they just watched that nuclear threat against the United States of America turn into a peace summit in just a matter of months. Well, what this has done, it's given them a renewed hope for peace in their region, in the Middle East as well, when President Trump releases his plan. This is very, very important to you and I from a biblical perspective. I mean, I'll get to the prophecy here in just a moment, but what's happened? The Times of Israel reports that the leaders of Israel have said, well, hey, if it can happen there, we've got faith that Trump, it could happen here. Because I promise you, folks, what Trump says he's going to do, he does. If you're a leader and you say, hey, we're drawing a line, a red line here, and then somebody crosses the line, you say, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to draw another red line. And then they step across that one, and you say, well, hey, as a result of that, guess what we're going to do? We're going to back up 50 paces, and we're going to draw another red line. You become a laughingstock at that point. But when you draw a red line and somebody steps across it and you cut their toes off, I mean, I'm just telling you, when you do what you say you're going to do, people stand at attention and pay attention to that. And so the world is watching. All these global leaders are watching Donald Trump. Up until now, the leaders of the United States for the last several decades have played ball with this international community, this world government. We were the leaders of that. All the way from 1945 onward, we were the main proponent of this world governing system. So they pretty much did what they wanted to. And now we've got a guy that says, look, North Korea, you're not going to do that. And when he says, if you fire a rocket at us, we'll blow you off the map, they pay attention to that. And so it's a whole different dynamic going on. So the leaders of Israel looked at what happened yesterday and over the last several months and thought, man, there's a real hope for peace in the Middle East now. So the leaders of Israel, Gabay, he looked at the Trump-Kim summit, and he said, hey, this signals peace with the Palestinians could even be possible. Even though everybody's tried, nobody's been successful, look at how things can change on a dime and work out when you've got the right people negotiating. So both of Israel's left and right drew inspiration from Donald Trump's meeting with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un. And with one of the leaders saying that it proved peace was possible between Israel and the Palestinians. And another one was expressing hope that the Iranian nuclear program could be dismantled alongside the North Korean one. Because you realize what happened when they signed the Iran nuclear deal, President Obama and all the other world leaders, that they lifted the sanctions and actually gave them $150 billion. Well, it basically did nothing. They were still moving, and it had sunset clauses in it, which said, hey, these stipulations, certain specific stipulations were going to end. They would have a sunset. And they would have been able to get a nuclear weapon eventually anyway. It really did nothing. It just postponed the inevitable. Well, Donald Trump come along and said, no, I'm not going to give you a dime. We're going to dump sanctions right back on your head if you don't stop trying to get a nuclear weapon. So the heads of Israel, their center-left Labor Party, they took to Twitter to enthuse that what happened last evening can happen here in the Middle East as well. There's a renewed faith in the process because they've got somebody that people are paying attention to. And they said, as with any negotiations, the way forward demands building trust, even when it appears impossible, and finding shared interest. Avi Gabay said that in a Twitter post. He said, it's just a first step, but leaders with courage to initiate and bring people together can make all the difference. What happened last night between the United States and North Korea can happen here in the Middle East as well, or anywhere for that matter, if people will just sit down, communicate, work out a plan, and then implement the plan. Well, Knesset leader Yuli Edelstein called the summit an incredible step, not only for South Korea, but for the whole world. This is going to be he said it's going to be a long process, but the result could be revolutionary. A few years ago, we would never have imagined that regimes of this sort would surrender their weapons and power. And he said, I hope this process, which begins today, will create a desire for the similar processes in the Middle East. So there's a renewed, spirit, a renewed mindset in the Middle East. A lot of Israel's leaders that said, you know what, wow, it really happened last night. Perhaps it could happen here as well. Another, I-24, Israeli lawmakers expressed hope in the Middle East peace after the Trump-Kim meeting. Israel Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, he applauded Trump, saying the agreement serves as an example to other nations around the world. Israel Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan, he also praised Trump while expressing that a similar meeting between Trump and Iran's Rouhani would not be a bad idea. Well, imagine that. That would be a lot worse than Kim Jong-un. Because these people, they're just not thinking with a rational mind. You sit down and talk to the leaders of Iran, they could lie right to your face. I mean, how do you deal with somebody who will lie? You're not thinking about somebody who will tell a lie. There's no negotiating with them. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear, get up and walk away from the negotiating table and do whatever they want. The only thing those people understand many times, almost all the time, is force. And Erdogan called the agreement a tremendous achievement. And he also believed that regardless of whether the meeting had secured a dramatic agreement, that the meeting itself was historical. And then in the Israel National News, very important, in light of all this, Donald Trump is fixing to roll out his peace agreement. Israel National News reported yesterday that the United States ambassador to Israel was in Washington for discussions at the White House and the State Department about the administration's peace plan just yesterday. And U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Freeman, he left the United States several days ago to come over here to discuss President Trump's deal of the century, is what they're calling it, for peace between Israelis and the Palestinian Authority. There's been a growing number of reports recently that Trump is going to soon present his peace plan. And the AP actually claims that the Trump administration is going to release the details of the peace plan in mid to late June this month after Ramadan, which ends on the 14th. So you can see what's going on here. These guys, he's fixing to roll out his peace agreement. Israel knows that. They've already talked. Our administrator, our ambassador to the Israel has just been over here over the last few days talking about it, getting ready to release it. What's going on with Israel? Boots on the ground. Tell us what's going on. We're fixing to release our peace plan. Is it time? When should we do it? That's what they're talking about. And then last night, all these leaders of Israel looked at what happened between President Trump and Kim Jong-un and said, you know what? Wow, we've got a renewed hope here that it could happen. Well, you and I both know, according to Bible prophecy, that this is going to end up with a peace agreement. So how does it all turn out for Israel? Because if you just look at the scenarios going on in the news, you're going to get a biased opinion. That's why I love following Bible prophecy. And that's why it's so important that we do a program on what happened last night. Because even though many people have tried, many leaders and presidential administrations of the United States have tried to get a peace deal done between the Israelis and the Palestinians, it looked really hopeful. Or no, hopeless, I should say. But if you look at what just happened last evening, a lot of people are saying, wow, things can turn on a dime and maybe there is a possibility. Well, we know, and if you listen to the program, read our magazine, different things, watched us on TV, we know that there's going to be a peace agreement signed in the Middle East in just the very near future. It doesn't matter what the situation looks like right now, because you've just seen what happened last night. Things can turn on a dime, and people who you never thought would be sitting at a negotiating table could be sitting there shaking hands, signing documents, and getting peace agreements signed. So I'm going to talk to you about the prophetic implications of that. I know I'm coming up to a break here, and I don't want to cut you short. So we're going to talk about the prophetic implications of this final 7-year peace agreement in light of, because Donald Trump's fixing to roll out their plan, in light of what just happened at the Kim Jong-un, Donald Trump summit in Singapore last evening. You saw it. I saw it on the news. They shook hands. They went in. And folks, it's so important. We remember just a few months ago, they were threatening to wipe each other off the planet here. You understand? Last night they sat down signing peace agreements. Very important. And so, could the same thing happen in Israel? I'll tell you from Bible prophecy, absolutely.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-ENDTIME and get your subscription today.
So, according to the prophecies of the Bible, how does this all turn out for Israel? Because up until this point, I know that Israel has hoped something would happen, but some of them had kind of lost hope because many administrations have tried. The Palestinians always fell back on their Arab brethren and said, no, we can't do that. And it's just nothing has ever came of it. We're still, after all these decades, sitting at the same spot with the Palestinians and the Israelis. But at the end of the day, the Bible specifically says that it's all going to change at some point. They're going to sit down and they're going to sign an interim peace agreement. So let's talk real quick about the final 7-year timeline. Very, very important. The Bible foretells that final 7-year period that's going to immediately precede the Battle of Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. And it also describes the specific event that will mark the beginning of that final 7 years. So all you and I have to do is to watch for that initial event that marks the beginning of that timeline. And Irvin Baxter, myself, we went over this timeline many times on the program, and we'll go over it many more times because you and I are the generation that will live through that. So it's of utmost importance that we understand the timeline and what starts that. And then so the final event marks the beginning of the timeline, and then we'll know that once that event occurs, you'll know that there's only 7 years remain until the culmination of it all. So let's talk about the Middle East Peace Treaty real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we've been over it so many times, and it's going to be one of the most recognizable prophecies in the Bible only to those who understand the prophecy. There will come a time when a peace agreement is signed in the Middle East in the near future. Most people on earth will not have a clue what just happened. They won't understand the weight of it and how important it is what just happened, that when that peace agreement signed that has the specific characteristics, and I'm going to give you those here in just a moment, that's the event that starts the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ. You say, no man knows the day or the hour. I know the Bible says that. The Bible actually says no man knoweth, K-N-O-W-E-T-H, knoweth the day or the hour. So 2,000 years ago, they couldn't know. None of the writers of the New Testament Bible understood the writings of Daniel. None of them. So they couldn't know the day or the hour, the time, what's going on. They couldn't know that. But at the end of the day, the Lord told Daniel, close up and seal this book because it's for the people of the time of the end. Now we can understand about all of the nations that will be on the earth at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. We can understand about the peace agreement, a lot of prophecies about the Antichrist, a lot of different things. And so it helps us to kind of get an idea. Well, Daniel 9:27 prophesies that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant, or there will be a peace agreement signed with many for that final 7-year period. It's Daniel's 70th week. And that peace agreement is going to be the confirmation of God's covenant with Abraham that Israel would always have a homeland in the promised land. He gave the promise all the way back in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. So the fulfillment of that prophecy is going to be the signing of a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. Now you say, today, having looked at the news over the past several years, no way. Those guys are never going to sign a peace agreement. I mean, look at what's been going on in Gaza just recently. They've been storming the dividing fence, the barrier, and Israel's been shooting them because they've been sending kites over on fire and different things, burning up Israeli fields. I mean, it's been horrible. And you look at that situation and you say, nah, it's never going to happen. They're not going to sign a peace agreement. I'm telling you, the Bible says they're going to sign a peace agreement. And if you look at what just happened with Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, you realize, wow, something can change just in a matter of weeks and months that makes things possible where you never dreamed it could be possible before. So there's going to be a peace agreement signed between Israel and the Palestinians. And that prophesied agreement, he said, well, how in the world will I recognize it? Because you had the Y River Accords, the Oslo Accords, all these different agreements that got signed. How'd you guys know that they weren't the one? Well, they didn't have the characteristics of the peace agreement that the Bible gives us through many prophecies that let us know that what the peace agreement, what it has to include, the characteristics of it. So there are three main characteristics that you need to know for the peace agreement. When a peace agreement is signed in the near future, if it does these three things, then we will know that's the peace agreement, and that starts the final 7 years. Number one, it's going to establish a Palestinian state in Judea. And if you look at the situation today, you can say there's no way. Israel's not going to give the rulership of the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, the entire West Bank, they're not going to give that over to the Palestinians. The Bible specifically says that they will. And then, so this peace agreement in the near future is going to be given to them. The Bible talks about that those that live in Judea will have to flee. And so there's going to be a two-state solution created. Number two, the peace agreement will allow the Jewish settlers who are living in Judea or the modern-day West Bank, they're going to remain in their homes. That's been a huge sticking point. What do we do with all the 800,000 Jews, the settlers that are living out there now? What are we going to do with them? We're not just going to go in there and pluck them up by the roots and say, no, get out, drag them out kicking and screaming. That's not going to happen. They're going to live as a Jewish minority in that new Palestinian state. The new peace agreement is going to provide for that. Number three, it's going to place the Temple Mount under an internationally supervised sharing arrangement, probably the United Nations or something like that that's going to oversee it. And it's going to allow both Jews and Muslims to worship there, and it's going to allow Israel to build her third temple. Now, when you see a peace agreement in the near future that has those three characteristics, then you can know that, hey, that's the peace agreement, and you can know assuredly, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ has just begun. And I know that, that it doesn't seem possible. The peace agreement, that's exactly where we're headed. And you say, well, I don't see how that's possible. I mean, look at the situation on the ground today. Look at the news we see. It's just a complete, total upheaval. Well, the fact of the matter is that the news tends to give you the worst case scenario. I know that when Irvin Baxter, myself, our research team here, we're going through the news, and we might be looking for some graphics or different things of what's going on in Syria and this, that, and the other. They always take the absolute worst pictures they can find, and they'll put them up and say, here's what's going on in Syria. Or, and it's not comical, but I mean, it almost kind of is, because when they say, hey, here's Israel, look what's going on in Israel. It's turmoil, and there's intifada, and there's war, and all this other. Look at the Gaza, everything's going on in Gaza, and they're storming the gates. Well, we've actually been over there before when that stuff was going on, and we never knew it. We were in Tel Aviv, Israel, up in the Golan Heights. A lot of different things were going on. We actually heard shots one time when I was up in the Golan Heights as we were getting on the bus. We take everybody up in the Golan Heights, and we look over the UN encampment down there and look over into Syria. Irvin Baxter does one of his the prophecy segments there. As we're getting back on the bus, we heard shots over there, machine guns and stuff going off. That's the only thing I've ever heard in all the times. I honestly don't remember how many times I've been over there. That's the only thing I've ever heard. But yet, in the news, they were acting like it was World War III over there. We never knew it. And so at the end of the day, you kind of got to watch your news and what they're reporting on, because they can act like, everybody in the whole country is about to get killed when they're not. So when you look at Israel and the Palestinians, I've been to Israel many times. I've been on many, many, many tours. And the Palestinians and the Israelis that are in Israel, the West Bank, they get along. It's the politicians that keep everything stirred up, and their ideology and this, that, and the other. And when you see the news, they'll show a Palestinian stabbed an Israeli that morning, and so the whole country is going to pot. That's kind of not the way it is. I've been over there many times, and they make it out to be a lot worse than it is on the ground there. Many of those people get along. And so, as a matter of fact, I've got articles that say that the Jews that are living out there in the West Bank, that if it was ever going to go into a two-state solution, that they would be willing to live out there under Palestinian jurisdiction. And so, but you don't hear that in the news. And so you got to watch. You got to look at your news sources and say, do they have an agenda that they're trying to push? And many times they do. You've found that out since Donald Trump got in office and he started calling them fake news. And, at the G7 meeting the other day, a guy asked Donald Trump a question, and you could tell it was this liberal question from CNN, and Donald Trump said, "Who are you with?" And he said, "CNN." Donald Trump said, "Well, I figured that." Because there's just like an agenda going on behind what's going on, but you can kind of see what's going on in the Middle East. Well, many people are asking themselves, there's no way that we could have a peace agreement in the Middle East. And on the outside looking in, watching the news, you would think, that's true, there is no way. Those people are at each other's throats. There's no way they're going to sit down and sign a peace agreement. However, if you look at the prophecies of the Bible, then you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's going to be a peace agreement signed in the near future. You don't have to question that. There's no question. It's going to happen. I don't care what the scenario looks like on the news or that you read in the paper, whatever. It's going to happen in the very near future. And my point for the program today is to talk about what just happened in North Korea. And I gave you the history lesson, you remember, where they were at each other's throat just a few months ago. And last evening, they sit down, had a nice conversation. They signed the document. Donald Trump showed him a video, showed Kim Jong-un a video of, hey, here's what North Korea would look like. Get rid of your nuclear weapons and, release our prisoners of war, a lot of different things. We'll lift the sanctions as we go, as we see that you're keeping up your end of the bargain. And look at where your economy could be in just a few years if you just play ball and get along with everybody. And those types of negotiations made it possible for what happened last night. I promise you, everything was negotiated before they ever even landed in Singapore. All their teams back and forth had already negotiated all of that. Well, that could happen in the near future with the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Arabs, the Israelis, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his lawyer, Jason Greenblatt. They've been over there working for almost 18 months now, maybe a little longer than that. And that's pretty much exclusively what they've been working on. They've been on a fact-finding mission. What can we get done? What can't we get done? They come back, they told Donald Trump, one of the biggest things they said, we don't think we're going to be able to solve right now is Jerusalem. What's Donald Trump do? Takes Jerusalem off the table, moves our embassy there. So even though it doesn't look like it right now, things can turn on a dime just within a matter of weeks and months. And two people who you never dreamed could be sitting at a negotiating table could sit down, be shaking hands and signing documents. In the near future, just like it's prophesied in Scripture, that's exactly what you're going to see happen between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.